So this is what I really wanted to call it, but it's a bit long for a title. Use this section to tell us about your target audience and how you will reach them. That's on all those public engagement forms. That's what they want to know. And it's appearing more in research grant applications, a section on dissemination. And you can use that area for this kind of work as well. So this is where Sheena first came across me, standing on the stage at the Museum of Science and Industry doing a science show-off last year. I was saying it's easily the most terrifying thing I have ever done. Standing on stage in front of a whole room full of professional science communicators is terrifying. So that was pushing my boundaries, definitely. And there's lots of this kind of event about. So there's science show-off, history show-off, museum show-off. But the people who attend them, they're kind of a self-selecting audience to a certain extent. Something a bit wider is Bright Club. This is Bright Club Oxford. That's me doing my impression of a child who's really keen, not just got their hand up, but somebody pushing it up really high to answer the question. You can't really see the audience just there, but probably mostly late 20s to mid 30s, not much outside that age range. All people are willing to go to a pub in the week and drink beer and laugh at people. But again, a very, very friendly audience, just like the show-off setups are. So if you want to practice your skills at talking on stage, these are great because they come with training as well. So a really good opportunity to get up there and actually practice your skills at speaking to adults. And they will take you from all different sectors. Okay, let me introduce you to the Racket Rocket, this great thing for getting people interested in what you're doing, even if it's absolutely nothing to do with science. So you start off with a bendy drinking straw. And if you look at your bendy drinking straw, you'll see that one end of it has been flattened and cut into a point. I've cut the very end off so that you don't spike yourself in the eye with it, because, you know, it's just after lunch. Anything could happen. So we've got like a reed part here, and then we have our tube down there. So this is a straw oboe, in fact. And when you put it in your mouth and you blow on it, these parts, this bit at the end that's like a little bird's beak, will vibrate in your mouth. The vibrations travel down the straw, and when they come out, it's a vibration which we hear as sound. So far, so simple. To make it work, you have to do your best granny lips, bit of a lick of your lips. And then you've got to put it in your mouth so that those pointy bits are free to move, so far enough into your mouth to make it actually move. And you're going to blow quite hard with sort of fairly tight lips. Okay, some people are going, if it's not working, try moving it in and out, but I'm not going to demonstrate that because it's being filmed. So in terms of audiences, this is something I think should be done in every town. This is Soapbox City in Oxford. It was organised by the local theatre. I'm getting some fingers being pointed. Organised by the theatre in Oxford, and you had 3-minute slots, and anybody could apply to speak, as long as you promised, I think it was, not to swear and not to be naked. You could talk about anything you wanted to for 3 minutes, and they had. So in the section that I was on there was a lady who was talking about how being on the bus and talking to somebody on the bus had stopped her feeling lonely. She talked about that for 3 minutes. And there was an incredibly brave teenage girl who stood up and talked about her best friend who died of a drugs overdose, and how her friend had become known as this druggy girl, but actually that wasn't her at all. So she stood up in front of the whole city to explain what her friend was actually like, which had loads of people in tears, including me. So we had like a little science section in there, and there's various scientists hiding away in the hut there. The really tall one at the back is Chris Lintop, the chap who does Sky at Night. And I'm there with bulging pockets because I was extracting my own DNA in 3 minutes using household materials, as you do. So I've got sort of soapy water in one pocket and extraction buffer in another, and down here is a big pot of frozen alcohol. Not for emergencies, but for actually getting the DNA to precipitate. And that's what I talked about. But this is a great thing that would work really well as a university-wide event, just getting people from different departments dotted through the day. A really, really good idea. Now, our audience there was on May Day morning in Oxford. Now, I don't know if any of you know May Day morning in Oxford. There is a tradition of the students getting absolutely hammered, staying up all night, chucking themselves in the river off the bridge and then staggering back through town. All whilst choir boys sing beatifically from the top of the church tower. So on May Day morning, you've got a massive mix of tourists, drunk people, and people shopping. So it's really quite a bizarre audience. But they were all stopping and watching. Not many children, mostly adults. Okay, another way of reaching people is local media. So this is something we did for Science Week last year in Oxford. This is Renee Watson, who was organising the Science Festival in Oxfordshire at the time. And she invited me in to go and talk about the things that we were doing for Science Week. Just a regular Sunday afternoon programme. And being Renee and I, obviously we had to take some things in for the radio presenter to do. So Renee took dry ice cream, and I took in the kit to do making sweets with spherification. You know how Heston Blumenthal makes like beetroot caviar and things. So doing that, but with fruit juices. So we had the presenter making sweets and eating them and testing things, and we were explaining the science behind what was happening. And it just so happened that on the same programme was Christine Wallace, the lady on the end. She was on Bake Off a couple of years ago. She made it through to the quarterfinals. And she's like our local Bake Off hero. Every town has one. And she was there doing a baking slot. And we all got talking and went, yeah, oh, this is cool, you know, afterwards, and they'd stop broadcasting. Really good ideas coming out. And then Christine said, well, we do a big bake-off event in December, just before Christmas, the Didcot Christmas bake-off. Oh, why don't you come along and do some science? They'd love it. So we applied to the Royal Society of Chemistry, got a grant, went along. Renee and I did some demonstrations, actually the same one's named there, and some other ones. And then Christine stood up to the audience and did her demonstration, so a cookery demonstration. She made like cinder toffee, so honeycomb, and she made crumpets, and we made dry ice cocktails. And Renee and I set up sort of demonstrations to back up what she was doing. And we had, it was a brilliant time. And in terms of our audience, if we go to the next slide, so that's the age and gender profile of the people who actually attended that event. So we were expecting it to be pretty much all old ladies before we started. But as you can see, it was a massive spread of age groups. It was 60% female, which surprised us that there were so many men there. And they weren't all accompanying their husbands in a henpecked fashion either. So it was a real mix of people. And so after the demonstration, people came up to us and were saying, oh, so my cakes have been sinking for years. Why does that work? What's happening there? So Christine, with her baking expertise, could say which ingredient they were missing or whether it was an oven temperature thing, and then Renee and I could chip in with the science and explain it. And it turned into this big sort of impromptu cookery love-in. It was wonderful. But a great event, and it's something that will be going on around here, and if you can find a way to invade a bake-off, you've got a really good ready-made audience. You'll start to get the feeling that I invade lots of things. Okay. So this is a science festival, which is a kind of a pop-up science festival in a market square on a Saturday morning. So just getting unsuspecting shoppers as well as people who are actually there already, because they know the science festival is going to happen. But if you've got an activity that will engage a child, it doesn't matter whether it's science or not, if you've got an activity that will engage a child, while the child is doing that, you can be talking to the adult. So you can get two different audiences in there. So also at these kind of things, there's often children with grandparents, so that's another demographic that you're looking at. So that kind of festival is great. And also if they've got something that they can take away with them, like the racket rocket, something that draws attention, that will draw other people into your stall to what you're doing. In science we do this a lot. This is science busking. Literally putting a load of stuff in a backpack. You see I've got my backpack on there, which has a big sign on the back saying, I'm a scientist, talk to me. And we went out to like a local park place. So there's the health centre, children's play park and the mosque in like a little triangle. So we set up in the middle of it on a Saturday. And the people who came along, we were doing little science tricks with them like this. As you can see, whilst I'm working with this little boy, my colleague's chatting to his dad at the back. So this little boy stayed making, this is a stick bomb, brilliant thing to make. He stayed doing that for about 20 minutes with me. So he was really engaged and really interested. We were talking about the science of how it's made and setting it up and launching it. And his dad in the background was having a good chat with somebody from somewhere else about other events that were happening. So those are really good. And you can literally, if you've got an activity that you can pack into a backpack, you can take it anywhere. So think about the kind of activity you can use to engage people and literally take it to them wherever they're going to be. Think about where your target audience will be and go. This is a children's centre. If you don't know about children's centres, they're based in originally they were based in areas categorised as low socio-economic status, but there are also rural ones at the moment, although a lot of them are being closed due to government cuts. But the idea of a children's centre is to support parents through those early years, 0 to 5, and what they want to do is they're pushing healthy eating and actually doing stuff with your child. So if you can come up with an activity that engages both child and parent together, they will love to have you along. They're always looking for activities, interesting and different things. Any kind of experience, if you've got ideas, come and sound them off me. I'm really happy to let you know whether that's the sort of thing they'll go for. You do need to have a DBS check to go and work in a children's centre, that's the only thing. So here you can see this is a day that we had a grant from the British Science Association to go in, and the grant paid for me to go in for a massive box of fresh fruit. So we took in like pineapples and bananas and apples and stuff. And it also paid for all the children there to have a magnifying glass to take home. So they were looking at everything in the children's centre with a magnifying glass. And that led to some of them drawing pictures and just looking really closely at what we were doing. Okay, so children's centres are a great audience. And if you can weave bubbles into whatever you are doing in any way, they are brilliant. So you can see the way these children reacted to them. And we use them for talking about colours and shapes and sizes when you're working with children of that age. Very simple. And with the adults, you can be talking about soap films and why the bubbles are lasting so long. And yes, it's a special mixture I'm using, but I can't tell you the ingredients and all of that sort of stuff. But you can talk about the actual science behind a bubble if you happen to be a scientist. But they absolutely love bubbles. And if you go to a children's centre, only expect children to sort of drift in and out and maybe work with you for 5 minutes. And then they'll want to go off and do running around like crazy, which is what we were doing with the bubbles there, and they had a great time. And this brings me on to another very young audience, CBeebies. So they do a big day out. So last year it was in Weston-super-Mare, just opposite. They were building Dismaland whilst we were there doing that. So on the seafront at Weston-super-Mare, great big marquees. One was running the Furchest Hotel show, which is all the Sesame Street puppets, including Cookie Monster and Elmo, but they weren't there. I was gutted. And you'll recognise a little prop here that we built for this work. So we had a mask that matched Fergus here. That was the idea. So they had the Furchester Hotel show. There was Michael, the author of Rasta Mouse, was there telling stories of Rasta Mouse. Somebody described it as Woodstock for kids. And it was, I mean, they were literally all over the place in just the nappies. It was hilarious. So at this event, they asked us to contribute some science. And if we go on to the next one, so John Wood, who's another science presenter, he said, oh, you've got to get Sarah if you're doing small children. So I went on board with that project. If we go on to the next one, we were doing the science of food from plate to poo. So the idea was that the activities would be suitable for age 0 to 5, but we knew we'd have family audiences there too. So the first one, with the Fergus mask, I'll put it on. The idea is that they put on their mask, hold their nose, take a drink, and then they have to tell you what flavour it is. And it was just to get them thinking about how we use our sense of smell and how we also taste with our eyes. So we had a red cup and a yellow cup, and they knew they were both on the table, but they didn't know what they were drinking. And that got some good reactions from the kids. And of course, they all wanted their picture taken with the mask on. And then we had other activities. We were taking the iron out of breakfast cereals. We had cornflour water mix for children to hit and play with. And there were so many people who'd never played with cornflour and water. Has anybody here never played with a cornflour and water mix? Oh, you've got to go home and do it. Go on the way home, go to the supermarket, get a box of cornflour, put it in a bowl when you get home, mix it up with some water so it's a nice sort of stiff paste, play with it. It's non-Newtonian fluid. When you can relax and it drips through your fingers, squeeze it hard, and the pressure will change the way that it acts, so it becomes really hard. You can literally punch it and you don't get covered in it. It's amazing. Love it. And if you put it in punch bag balloons like we did, then you can really, really punch it, and they last quite long. So, sorry, cornflour water. And then we had the digestive system. So we started off with a head and a big bowl to represent the tummy. And we added in porridge and coffee and sweet corn. You have to have sweet corn in it. And various ingredients, mashed it up, passed it through a fake intestine, doing all the movements as we went. And then it comes out at the end as poo. And there were children literally retching at this. They were so appalled. John was spectacular at this one. He really, really, really camped it up. It was brilliant. And then you encourage everybody to go home, have sweet corn for their tea, and see how long it takes to come out again. So it was a very participatory session, even after they'd gone home. And the festival ran for 5 days, and we had people coming back and reporting their sweet corn results to us, which was super. Okay, so we've gone to the next one. Yeah, so that was the view across our tent. There were 40,000 people through in 5 days. That's a lot of people and a lot of talking. Oh, now, moving on to sort of out-of-school clubs, if you're interested in working with kids. It's a different way in rather than going to schools. So you've got Beavers, Cubs, Scouts. These are the Muslim Scout Fellowship. They are affiliated to Scouts, but they are sort of run slightly separately. They have separate sort of their own groups. And they're becoming much more common. We've now got one in Oxford. So rainbows and brownies and guides, you can see they're very good at their branding compared to the Scouts. And then groups like the Woodcraft folk, who I don't know if you've heard of, people like Elfins and whatever. So there's a massive range of after-school groups out there. And people, so they work towards badges. And I challenge you to get a book like this and look through it and find that there is nothing you can contribute to, because they do badges in every subject, and there will be something in there that you can contribute to. So if you can come up with an engagement activity that will work for anywhere between, so sort of Beavers and Rainbows start at 6, anywhere from 6 up to sort of 16. If you can tailor it so that it will contribute towards a badge, they would love to have you. They really would. Lots, and they'd be really interested and excited. The children will be as well. Yeah. Then we have sort of more particular faith groups that I've worked with. So the Fusion group are a group of local churches, and they run a summer club that runs for a week. All sorts of activities laid on, completely free, and sort of all the kids from the local primary schools come along and spend a week there doing different activities. And I go and invade with a bit of science. So in one room they'll be talking about the story of David and Goliath, and then I'll be next door launching rockets. But it's just different ways of working with different groups. And they'll be delighted to have you as somebody with an activity to engage the children. It doesn't need to be religious. And then in Oxford we've also got the kids club that runs on a Friday evening while the parents are at the mosque. And so they also look for interesting activities. And you'll find this in any city, it's not just Oxford. Yeah. Oh, now, after school clubs. Places like primary schools are desperate for after school clubs. They really are. Finding somebody who can go in and run it, because it's hard to make an after school club economically viable, because you're there for such a short amount of time and it takes so much preparation. But if you can get a grant to run one, it puts you in a brilliant position to do it. So this is an after-school science club that I ran. That's a rocket experiment, as you can see, having great fun. And schools, even if you can only offer it for one term, you know, every Monday night for one term, they will still be interested, especially if it's free. And you'll get a good mix by targeting the school that you offer it to. You're targeting your audience. And you'll get a good mix of kids staying behind to a free club where their parents just get an extra sort of hour and a half of childcare at the end of the day. They'll be very willing. Okay? I know I am. So this is to remind me about if you're applying to work with school children. So this was written, so I went into a school which was not doing very well according to Ofsted, had a high percentage of free school meals, and I took in this was Royal Society of Chemistry funded stuff, and there was a boy who came in and the teacher sat right next to him. So when that happens, you know that's a child that you're going to have to keep an eye on. And this boy spent the whole time glued to what we were doing, didn't move. He put his hand up to answer questions, you know, absolute model student. And then he went away and he wrote this, and it was actually written in an intervention session. So he was taken out of his class because of his behaviour and because of his appalling handwriting, and asked to sit down and write. And his intervention teacher came over to him and said, "You have to see this. He never, ever, ever does this," and bought me this. Today I was very excited because an amazing scientist showed us an experiment. I really like science because I want to invent something. So he'd come out absolutely bouncing with excitement from what we'd done, and then he'd sat down, he was desperate to put it down on paper. You know, and the teacher was quite amazed by that. And they also worked out that he liked science, which they didn't know. He's 10, and they didn't know he loved science. So that gave the school a new way in to engage him as well, which was really good. But yeah, so that's just to remind me to mention, when you're selecting your schools, you can get data on sort of the level of free school meals from the Ofsted data dashboard. It's a really good website. And there's also a website called Lock Rating, LOCRATING, Lock Rating, where you can find out about, in an area, which schools are graded what by Ofsted on a map, so you can plot them really easily and find them. Those are two really good websites for finding schools that you might want to work with. If you want data on ethnicity in schools, you will have to go to the local council to get that, but they should provide it to you. Okay. Somewhere you might not have thought of working is the Children's Hospital School. You might not even know it exists. If you are in hospital as a child for 3 days or longer, the hospital school come round and visit you. What a treat. So just when you're feeling really rough, somebody comes round and asks you to do some maths. So not every hospital has a children's hospital, but if you have a children's hospital, it will have a school in it. And people, they like interesting and different activities. So at the Oxford Children's Hospital, there's somebody who goes in and does art, somebody does storytelling, somebody goes in and talks about local history. Big range of people that can go in and talk. And if you have objects you can take in for them to handle and talk about, particularly I'm looking at museums people here, it's a really good place to go. I got the Josh Award, which is an award for science communicators, open at the moment if you wish to apply. Currently held by an academic from Salford, Andy Meyer. And it's a great award. They give you money to develop a show for the Manchester Science Festival, and an equipment fund, and you get a personal development fund as well, and you get mentor. So look that up, Josh Award. It's well worth having a look at and seeing if you think you're suitable to apply for it. So I won that because of this kind of work with special needs audiences. So when it comes to your form, and it says to you, use this section to tell us about your target audience and how you will reach them. Hopefully you'll have some ideas from this about different audiences that you can actually target. Go on to the next one. So I thought this is my one slide with actual writing on it. My top tips are, if you can, make it free. And then, particularly if you're working with children, people aren't worried about whether they've got to pay for materials or anything. Keep it really simple. You might have to explain this several hundred times in a day. So keep it really simple. Don't have sheets of instructions, for example. Make it hands-on. If people are actually doing something, they will engage much more deeply with what you're doing. Take the activity to them. So literally go to the school or to the scout group. For a lot of people, going into a university or into a museum is such a barrier they will never cross it. No matter how lovely and friendly you are, it's too far outside their comfort zone. For some children that I've met, they literally don't leave their estate, and they're not going to see it unless you take it to them. I tend to work with people by asking them questions. So when we're doing the workshops, we're asking questions and developing conversations from there. Finding out a bit about them so you can relate whatever it is you're doing to them personally. And give them something to take home. Everybody likes a sticker, though I've forgotten to bring my stickers for you today, so you'll have to make do with your rockets, I'm afraid. Everybody likes a sticker. Everybody likes to make something and take it home. And remember, whilst you've got a child making something, or adults, when I do these things, I have adults making the rockets as well. Don't make an activity just for children. I've had, on one of the events I did on a Market Square event when we were doing the making sweets using spherification, my visitors literally came from a child who had to get out of their buggy to stand up. They had to stand up on the seat on their buggy to get to the table, right through to a group of women pensioners who were hilarious, who came and had a go, and they tested everything and asked loads of questions and were really engaged. So don't make it too narrow. Make sure that it's something that can be accessed by everybody, every age group. And the last thing is, if you need help and you don't have the confidence to go out and do it, ask someone. There will be somebody in the department who's done something. Guys like Sheena, a massive group of people with a load of expertise who can back you up. And then there's people like me who are always happy to come in on a grant, because you can always write in on a grant for somebody to come in and train your postgrads or whatever to do something. I was a referee on a grant recently, and it was literally training postgrads to do PE, so it was great. And yeah, so if you need help, ask for it. There's loads of people around to help. If you got any ideas you want to fire off me, I'm open for a chat. And that's it, really. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay.